All right, I think I did it this time. I think we're actually live, on time, early even, 1 minute early. 1 minute early. Let me know that you can hear me, and then I'll get rolling. Excellent. Concurrent viewers just tanked. They're like, oh, you actually showed up. I'm out of here. All right, Nicsmas 2021. AKA, don't act like an asshole, or directions for acting like an adult. Of course, disclaimer, I am not saying you're all assholes, and I'm not. I am an a-hole all the time. The reason I talk about this stuff, I don't plan any of these. I just changed the slides like a minute ago. None of this is planned, and the reason I'm comfortable talking about it is because this is all stuff that I deal with every single day and think about and talk about every single day with people. So again, if somehow you're new and you're jumping in to day 7, sequence is important. Like, sequence is important. That's something that I'm not going to talk about at this Nicsmas in depth, but people don't understand the importance of synergy and sequence. Like, it's a little bit different to get your tonsils removed and then get anesthesia afterward than the reverse, right? So we understand intuitively that sequence is important. Doing things out of order doesn't always make a whole lot of sense. It can be pretty painful. Way to push the button. Thank you. And if you know how Nicsmas is, if you know my style, I just kind of stream of consciousness about a general topic, broad strokes here, and it changes over time based on the feedback. So today is day 7, and it's the trade-offs. This is the trade-offs. This is where most people are being a-holes. They are actually trying really hard not to, and that is making them bigger a-holes in a much, much more damaging way. It's quite insidious the way this happens. And I'm going to talk a little bit about all of that. Go ahead and hit your 6-word updates while I ramble over on Twitter. We're getting 70 to 100 a day. I'm having people, partners, friends that are saying some of the biggest value they're getting out of Nicsmas is watching it, but then going through and reading the 6-word updates just because of the clarity and how concise people are being with their thoughts and their takeaways. So you are contributing in a very big way to other people by hitting your 6-word update, sharing your 6-word update. And again, as I said, if you can't do a 6-word update 12 days in a row, then the problem's not out there. You're not looking out a window. You're looking in the mirror, blaming other people for your problems. No judgment if you can't do it. Just be honest with yourself about why you may not have the results that you want in life, because you can't do something you commit to doing for 12 days in a row. That's a problem. It's normal. It's typical. That doesn't mean it's not a problem. It doesn't mean it's not inhibiting you from getting from where you're at to where you want to be. Now, to be clear, something is only a problem if it is stopping you from getting from where you're at to where you want to be. I have no position on what is right or wrong, what is a problem or not a problem. The problem are behaviors that get you further away from what you want, which means you either are being honest about what you want or you are behaving like an a-hole. And if you're not being honest about what you want, you're being an a-hole. Basically, no matter what, if you're not getting closer to what you want at some level, you're being kind of an a-hole, and you are doing it to yourself. All right, so this came up yesterday. It's a comment about Nicsmas, and I appreciate it. It says, people who pay attention. That's a quote, right? So Jake here is quoting somebody. Except for Nicsmas 2021 with Peter Nixon, which is this maniac on Twitter. That shit is free. And I've given the series more attention than any of the 5-figure coaching I've paid for in the past, always proving them wrong. Yes, I appreciate that, and thank you. And I want to highlight this because this is a huge, I said it right here, this is one of the ways that we are being an a-hole all the time is, one, we've been duped by people that want to take our money, that the only currency that matters is money. Right? You can actually get, I hear it all the time, I can't afford that. I don't think this influencer will do that. I can't pay him enough, or yada, yada, yada. And it's a huge mistake. You can actually get anybody to do almost anything if you actually understand which currency it is that they value most. making the assumption that money is the currency that people value most makes you kind of an a-hole. You are swimming upstream. In fact, most of the people that you probably want to connect with that really matter to you, money is not the currency that they value most. I'm pretty sure your spouse is not like, you could spend less time with me if you pay me more money. The currency they value is probably time. Maybe it's respect. Maybe it's attention, right? You got your love languages if you're into that thing. So for some reason, we orient towards thinking money is the currency that people value most. I'm going to be honest with you. Money is the currency. It's one of the currencies I value the least. I will pay people so I don't have to pay attention to them. I will pay money to not pay attention to things. So it's really important that we take these kind of sound bites and we don't become a-holes. We don't accept this as a truth because, again, we can go through our exercise where we invert it and we can start stress testing it and it's going to fall apart. Who's the person that matters most to me? You can list out the 10 people that matter most to you and say, is the way to get their attention to give them more money? And you will not get an answer. You will not get yes as an answer to all of them, which means that statement is not factual. It is true in certain circumstances. So it's just an example of using some of these Nicsmas frameworks. Not everybody values currency the same or values money as the main currency. So it's TIMER. It's a good acronym. Time, identity, money, energy, reputation. If you read the book, Predictably Rational, they talk a lot about the social norm versus the market norm. If you think I'm a nice guy, I think you're nice, we help each other out, and you say, hey, Nick, look, I'm moving. Can I borrow your truck? And maybe, if possible, can you help me move some furniture? I'm going to say, yeah, if possible, I will, because this is the social norm that we've developed. You're nice to me. I'm nice to you. You make my life easier. I make your life easier. I will say, yes, let me make time. If you call me up and you say, hey, Nick, I need help moving, I'll give you $100 an hour. No. Tell me my time is worth $100 an hour? Are you fucking nuts? I'm not doing anything for $100 an hour I don't want to do. And this has been repeated over and over and over in studies. They go to, you can read the book, Predictably Rational, it documents it really well. You go to the best attorneys and lawyers and say, hey, will you work this case at a discount? They say no. Hey, will you work this case, right, because it's a charitable act and here's why? They'll often say yes. So you have to recognize the social norm versus the market norm. The most powerful example I've seen is there was a daycare and they closed at 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever. Let's say 5 p.m. And parents were showing up at 5:05, 5:06, 5:10, right? And that's really stressful. That's tough on the workers because they want to be off by 5. They got to clean up and go home and all that stuff. So this daycare implemented the policy. And that policy was you have to pay for every minute you're late to pick up your kids. Guess what happened? Parents got later and later and later because now they're going, I can stay out with my friends for an extra $50. Cool. Right? So don't handicap yourself by believing people that want money from you want you to believe this bullshit. I don't remember what day it was, day 3, day 4, we talked about how to identify and call bullshit. You can run this through that filter. You can invert it and say, really, do they want to make more money or do they want to get home on time? And you'll be surprised how many people rather get home on time than make a little bit more money. Okay? Sure, some people rather make more money. That's the currency they value most. Generally speaking, here's the thing that's hard, and I apologize if this offends anybody. Here's the thing that we need to remember. If we're talking about currencies, people generally value the thing they have the least amount of. If you have unlimited amounts of money and very, very little time, you will pay a lot of money to get some time back. Okay? If you have a lot of time and very little money, you will spend more time to make a little bit more money, right? So we tend to value, rightfully so, the thing that we have the least amount of because we don't have an abundance of it. So we consider it scarce and valuable. Comments like this are specifically speaking to poor people that have a lot of time and do not value time. Right? Again, nothing wrong with it. It's if you want more money and that's your number one currency, great. No judgment. But statements like this, we have to recognize when somebody says people who pay attention, you are saying that the assumptions are these people don't have money. Therefore, if they are giving up what they have little of, it must be important to them. That is true for some people. That is not true for everybody. Wife doesn't care about money, yada, yada, yada. Yep. So carrying around these faulty one-liners, you're being an a-hole. You are. You're either assuming everybody's poor, which is not true, or you're assuming that everybody values money more than anything else, and more money is the way that you get more attention. It's the way that you get more respect. It's the way you get more authority, and that is not true. Being present. If I am present, I am paying attention. It is so much harder to get presence from me, my presence, than it is to get money from me. I will pay you to go away. If you bother me enough and you cause enough headache, I'll pay you to go away. So I do not have to pay attention to you. That's just me. Everybody's different. This general statement, and fortunately, this is inception. We talked about it yesterday. This is where somebody realizes they are in the middle of breaking this belief. They are on the other side of it, right? Always proving them wrong. This person says, Jake here, says it's free, and I recognize I've given this series more attention than any of the 5-figure code. You learned something about yourself, and hopefully something that you can pass forward to the people in your life through demonstration. I did not tell you this and try to get you to believe it. You experienced it and were receptive enough to what was going on in your own mind to recognize it for yourself. Do you see the difference between this, like, here's the narrative, now let me prove it's true, versus let's just experience things, keep the loops open, and journal and recognize shit about yourself? Because if you recognize it about yourself, inception, this is now something that you came up with. I didn't tell you this. You came up with it. Now I'm validating it as a belief that I also share. That makes sense? So that came up. I want to share that because it just happens that we talked about inception yesterday, and this is a perfect example of inception. I am now realizing that what people have sold me, this statement, people who pay attention, is not even true for me right now. So how can this be a universal truth if I'm experiencing something different right now? What does that mean? I don't know. It just means let's not be a-holes by blindly following what other people have sold us. Simplifying, disguise, complication, complexity, simplifying everything. Reading some 6-word updates here. Reread bumpers if you haven't. Thank you. Chakras aligned. Dan Barrett. Funniest man in marketing right there. Look to shorten the feedback loop. It's a good one. Strongly recommend you go through and read these. I do have multiple people that tell me they read them. And, it's the insights that you guys have that are going to be more valuable than any of the words that I say. The realizations that you come to by being open and receptive are exponentially more valuable to you and the people that matter to you, which we're going to talk a lot about today, than anything I could say. Do not repeat the words that I say. Think about them and come up with your own observations. Okay? What people lack is what they're willing to pay. Well, technically, what people lack is what they're least willing to pay, which is why if they pay it, they are likely going to pay attention. Right? The thing that people have an abundance of is what they're most likely to pay. That doesn't mean anything other than they have enough of it to pay. People will pay to get rid of headaches. They'll pay to not pay attention. They'll pay for things to go away. So the idea that because somebody pays, they care is not, they pay money, they care, is not necessarily true. It can be true in some scenarios, but as a universal truth, the thing that people have the least of is the thing they are least likely to give, which means if they give it, they probably care, right? It just, all these black and white answers to everything is ridiculous, right? Quote of the day from Robert Greene. I have read all of Robert Greene's books multiple times. I am a huge fan of his writing style. Become who you are by learning who you are. That is all you have to do. Go read his books. They're all justification for understanding what's going on and knowing who you are. Become who you are not by taking a bunch of actions, just by understanding who you are. You will naturally gravitate toward the behaviors that are appropriate for you if you actually know yourself. If you did yesterday's homework, I got a lot of feedback on this, you recognized it is a lot harder to learn who you are than you think. You have a lot of stuff that other people have planted in you that is not you that makes it really difficult to figure out who you are. I'll give you a second to read that slide. Poo-flinging monkeys. We're going to come back to this one more time. And this is actually from, for those of you that subscribe to the letter, this was my direct mail. I send a direct mail every month. I stopped doing it. Poo-flinging monkeys. I've shared this many, many times. This is what I want you to focus on. Here's how it goes. If you give a monkey, you got a group of monkeys. You got two groups of monkeys. Okay? Keep it simple. You give one group, you give them each one banana. They are very, very happy. They have more bananas than they did a minute ago. Over the moon. They're ecstatic. And this was actually pulled from research paper. Happy monkeys. Yesterday I had no bananas. Today I have one banana. This is awesome. One banana more than yesterday is amazing. Now the second group of monkeys, if you give them all 2 bananas, and then you realize, oh, we don't actually have enough bananas okay. So you come back and you take one away. They're pissed. They're angry. They're screaming. They start throwing their poo everywhere. They're in the same situation as the first group of monkeys. They have one more banana than they did when they woke up this morning. How come group 1 is saying, ooh, this is great, free bananas, and group 2 is saying, you took a banana away from me, I'm pissed off about it. Humans aren't so different. We talk about creating the high and the valley and all that stuff. So the question is, how many disadvantages do we incur by misframing our own problems? We're still up one banana, but we're pissed off because 5 minutes ago we had 2. If you are in crypto, which a lot of you people here come from my crypto world, this is when you have tripled your money, but you're throwing a fit because you thought you were going to quadruple it. This is when you're stressed and anxious because you're in a better place than you've ever been, but not as good as you were yesterday. It's a huge misframing of our problems. So you know how many times we act like an a-hole because we don't know how to appropriately frame our problems? What does that mean? That means don't be a poo-flinging monkey. That's what I see most of the time when I hear people like telling me stories about they're mad about. I'm just like, I have this imagery of monkeys flinging poo everywhere. But it also means that we know that we do this and we know that other humans do this, right? So from a expectation management standpoint, from a project management standpoint, I own crypto projects, I own companies, I own coaching programs, I work with a lot of people that do the same. Don't give people more if there is any chance at all you might have to take it away. You may think, well, they'll still be better off, but you are going to turn your friends, your family, your clients, your partners into poo-flinging monkeys. And you are the a-hole for doing it, for over-delivering in a way, trying to create an emotional high that is not sustainable. If you're in any of my companies or my crypto projects, you're going to look back and you're going to see we have a whole bunch of stuff developed that we haven't put out yet. Most projects are like, wow, throw everything out there. And they're like, oh, oops, this is sustainable. We got to take it away. You just turned a group of 10,000 people into poo-flinging monkeys, and you're wondering why it's so toxic. You're the a-hole that did it. So on 2 levels. Level 1, don't misframe your own problems. Be level-headed. I'm better off today than I was yesterday. In fact, I'm in a better position than I ever thought I would be. Yes, I was richer yesterday. But we can't see the future, and I'm still in a pretty good place. I'm plus 1 banana, right? Had I not had a good day, had I not had a phenomenal day yesterday, I would be ecstatic today. Yesterday's success actually makes me more of a dickhead today. But if yesterday was a failure and I am where I was today, and I am where I am today, I'd be super happy. Like, think about that. Really, like, that's what we're doing. And I just observe it, and it blows my mind. And then I'm like, holy shit, I hope I'm not acting like this. I better look in the mirror. This is one of the reasons why I build things the way I do. It's one of the reasons why it's not that the glass is always half full. It's that I'm actually in a better position than I was before. Not making up this like, ooh, positivity. Like, no, objectively, logic, reason, evidence, I'm in a better position than I was before. I have nothing to complain about. I'm not going to become a poo-flinging monkey and embarrass myself by not having the ability to recognize that. So it goes back to, do you guys remember I don't want to pull up and paint again because I don't know where the program is. Remember that chart with the channel? I'm still going up. I'm still on track. Why am I going to waste all my time and energy and let my friends and family and partners and people that respect me see me act like a child? A lot of you, a lot of people do great damage to the respect and reputation they get from others by acting this way. And you do it to yourselves by not understanding how to appropriately frame what you consider a problem. And you set up others for it too. Right? Get a little ambitious. Oh, we got all this stuff. Let's give people all this stuff. And then, oh, it's not sustainable. Oh, we can't give them all this stuff every month. But they should still be happy because it's still free stuff. But they're not. Stop living in the world of how people should act, and let's live in the world of how people actually act. Right? So, if you see this, and you're willing to think about it, it kind of makes sense to you, and then you continue to act this way, you are now officially being an a-hole knowingly. Poo-flinging monkeys, that is from the August 2020 letter. Right. Now, let's talk about trade-offs. There's always, always, always a trade-off. And this is where I think I'll lose a lot of people. And that's okay. You made it to day 7. I consider that a win. I'm not going to be a poo-flinging monkey. There's always a trade-off. And this is what I want you to consider when you think about closing the gap. What really matters to me. And I don't want to be an a-hole. I don't want to knowingly be an a-hole. There is always a trade-off. Okay? And by not acknowledging, recognizing, or acting as if there's a trade-off, you're being kind of an a-hole. Let me explain. If you have children, and a husband, or a wife, or a business partner, or a sibling that is very important to you, and you expose them, you say, this is the most important thing to me. All else, I just want to raise good kids. I just want to raise children that trust them, whatever your priorities are. Boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And you expose them to some kind of downside in order to be nice to somebody else, you are being an a-hole. Some of the biggest, in this context, the way we're defining a-hole, which is getting further away from the things that matter to you, or behaving in a way that gets you further away from things that matter to you. A lot of times, trying to be liked, trying to be nice, you are being an a-hole. You are. In crypto, I'm kind of an a-hole in the eyes of other people, not in my own, not by my principles, but other people, because they'll jump into a Telegram group, or they'll say, hey, or Facebook, and say, hey, tell me about this. And I'll say, no, go through the proper channels, because this is dangerous. Like, whoa, that's mean. You can't just tell me. No, because my priority in crypto is to get the people that pay attention and the people I care about into a space that will help them close the gap safely and responsibly. So I will be less nice to you because being nice to you puts the most important thing to me at risk. Puts the most important thing to me at risk. I see people do this all the time. If you want to be nice, you have some friend from high school come that doesn't really matter to you because whatever, but you want to impress them and be nice to them and you want them to like you, and you put stress on your business partners or your family or your kids in order to be nice to somebody that does not fit on your priority list, you are being an a-hole, because there's a concept called, I think it's in here, repeat exposure. Repeat exposure. If that is a habit of yours, yes, you were only nice to this person for 2 days, but there's 100 people like that, which means you've exposed the things that you say are the most important to you 100 times, 2 days, 200 times. Repeat exposure is what you're not accounting for. It's insidious because, but I'm being nice. How's that being an a-hole? Because by our definition, being an a-hole is acting in a way that gets you further away from what you want. So maybe complete strangers and people that don't matter thinking that I'm nice is a priority. And if that's the case, that's okay. Then be honest with yourself. Stop saying friends, family, partner, whatever is the most important thing to me if strangers liking you is more important. I think that's a weird priority, but as long as you're going to be honest about it, no judgment here. Right? So the repeat exposure, all that means is you can gamble. If you have a 1 in 100 odds of losing, you can gamble once, right? So let's say the 23rd player, you roll the dice. Whoever rolls the dice the 23rd time is going to lose. That's just how the odds work out. If you roll the dice 23 times in a row, there won't be a 24th roll if you lose at all. So repeat exposure changes the odds. And people don't fully realize this. They think it's all one-off incidents, right? Yeah, well, I smoke a cigarette every now and then, and I go skydiving every now and then, and I bungee jump every now and then. Those are all pretty low-risk things. Yeah, but in combination, the risk, the exposure to risk, becomes multiplicative. You become more and more and more likely to wreck yourself. It's no different with relationships and other priorities, okay? So when we talk about what really matters, we're trying to get from here to here. Let's close the gap. What really matters? When you go be nice, well, it would just be nice to do this. Southern hospitality, right? It would just, can't you just be nicer to me here? Not if it puts the things that are the most important to me at risk. If it makes those things uncomfortable, if it stunts their development, if it sends a wrong message. If we tell our kids, look, you play your game, you do, and then, I'm using our CCA language, you don't let anybody else dictate who you are and what you want. And then they observe every time somebody comes from out of town, we act like a different person. You are being an a-hole. You're being an a-hole. You are. So that's the thing that we really got to sit with, is like, what really matters to me? And all these things I do to be nice. You're trying so hard not to be an a-hole in like the context of the whole world, that you are being the biggest a-hole directly relative to the things that matter most to you. So no, I will not have a Telegram group that's wide open where we answer all your questions in the crypto space, because that's how people get wrecked. And if you think I'm not nice for doing that, fine. If you say, hey, what should I do next? I say, hey, look, go read these documents first and make sure you understand it. Well, can't you just tell me? Other projects are way nicer than you. Like, yeah, and they're more open to exposing you to risk because they prioritize you liking them more than keeping their people safe. I have different priorities. I would be an a-hole to, again, I'm talking to a lot of people that are investors in crypto projects. I am being an a-hole to you, those that are already positioned in, by worrying about strangers liking me. That's why I don't do it. Think about that in your life. Okay? Always a trade-off. Always a trade-off. You don't get to be nice to other people and also serve the goals that matter the most to you. You don't get to act one way sometimes while saying that the most important thing is something that is diametrically opposed. I mean, you can, but you're being an a-hole and you forfeit the right to complain about it. Hopefully that makes sense. Nth degree CPAs, can't you just tell me? Yep, it's reinforcing learned helplessness. Our number one message, the most important thing to me is one of the most important things to me is I cannot be around people that have a perceived level of helplessness. I cannot be around people that want to be saved. It will wreck my brain. No judgment against them. They can act that way. I just need them to act that way far, far away from me, or I'll go far, far away from them. So to encourage learned helplessness because I'm nice, I am being an a-hole. I am putting myself in a position that is diametrically opposed. I'm behaving in a way that is diametrically opposed to what I want most. Right? You forfeit the right to complain. If you watch this Nicsmas and you think about it, and you forfeit the right to complain about any part of your life if you continue to do this. It's not an easy thing. That's why most people don't get anywhere. Okay, so we're going to talk about the skills, or we're going to actually talk about skills challenge index, but I think I have something a little bit different. This is from April 2020. Okay, so I'm pulling up, and this is kind of like a little stealth. Like, this is not new. I've been writing about this and talking about this for a long time. And so these are my observations from April of 2020. I constantly see academics wasting time and energy putting on a show for other academics. Fitness professionals putting on a show for other fitness professionals, and authors putting on a show and writing for the approval of other authors. None of this makes you any better than you were yesterday. If I wrote this today, I would say none of this gets you any closer to the things that matter to you. Right? Soccer moms trying to impress other soccer moms. Well, if your goal is to raise well-adjusted kids, impressing other soccer moms is just a bunch of resources going to something other than that. It's probably getting you further away. All you're doing is showing your kids that what other people think of you is the most important thing. So if you say that, if you really believe that, and that is a macro belief of yours, great, you're right on track. You don't get to say one thing and then act another way. You're being an a-hole if you are. So I believe that is fragile in terms of a process that gets you the things that you actually want out of life. A life built around peer assessment is a life that is ground to a halt. You want to be here, or you're here, and you want to be here. And if your life is built around other people approving of you, you are not closing the gap unless the only thing you want is for other people to approve of you, in which case, great, keep doing it. But you forfeit the right to complain about the quality of your life as long as people approve of you. Here's the truth. So I write my letter for entrepreneurs, but this is for everybody. Entrepreneurs, parents, spouses, friends, partners, investors who are actually going somewhere important and impactful are not subject to the judgment of other entrepreneurs, investors, whatever. They are subject only to the judgment of their own personal priorities. That is you are here and you want to be here. This is what matters the most to you after you had a conversation with death and you're really clear on what's in. You are judged. Your behavior is judged only by how much it closes the gap and nothing else and nobody else. You want to fit in your peers, just popular now, that's fragile. If you want to withstand the test of time, you want to close that gap, act as if time is your only judge. What are we talking about? All of Nicsmas, time and randomness. We talked about order events already. So, and here's repeat exposure. So I've written about this before. It's not new. Might be hearing it differently this time. So that there's always a trade-off, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about that trade-off. Right here. Because we're going to come back to this decision-making quadrant. We're going to talk about squares today. All right, I'm going to zoom through this so that we have time for our VIPs to do Q&A. As we talked about before, you could have a poor decision that has a favorable outcome, right? Here's the bold. You have a good decision with a favorable outcome. We discount that. Of course, make good decision, get good outcome. That's the rhetoric, right? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You make a poor decision, you get a poor outcome. You go, what an idiot. That was obviously a bad decision. The danger where we forget the trade-offs and we start making huge mistakes is when somebody makes a poor decision and has a favorable outcome. It happens all the time. Luck, chance, right place, right time. Russian roulette. They were in a really bad spot, took a huge gamble, pulled the trigger. Whoop, wow, I won. And we go, wow, what a genius, right? So it's very, very dangerous that we believe that our outcome determines the quality of our decision. There's more to it than that. And it's also very dangerous when we believe the outcome others have determines the quality of their decision or their ability to make decisions. Is the letter still being published? No, we paused Billy and stopped sending a while ago. So what happens here is you can make a very good decision, have a poor outcome, and you think to yourself, wow, I'm such an idiot. I must not know how to make decisions. Reality is it was a great decision. Just luck happens. Bad luck happens. Wrong place, wrong time, COVID, unexpected, just unexpected things happen. And the risk is we go, wow, how did I mess that up? I must be an idiot. And I'll explain why this happens to the smartest people all the time. It's a little bit of Dunning-Kruger. And we go, but this person, I thought they were stupid. And the reality is they are. They made a really stupid decision, but they had a good outcome. Now we trust this person more than we trust ourselves, which is very, very, very dangerous. Over time, we develop this survivorship bias, right? There's a lot of people that make really bad decisions that end up really well, and we kind of make the mistake of thinking they're genius. Now, here's the problem with that, in my opinion, of course. I gotta move my screen around. We are always sold a narrative first. Okay? Something happens. We don't even know why most of the time, but then marketers, the news, media, we sell a narrative. We buy the narrative, right? And we go, oh, that makes sense. Because we don't really have the technical ability to discern whether or not it does at this point. And we think we have learned from largely a fabricated experience. This creates an unusually high level of certainty. I'm going to run my high-ticket funnel. I'm going to make $100,000 a month. Guaranteed. I already bought shit because I'm so sure I'm gonna do it. How often does that work out? Right? So we start learning things from fabricated experiences. We get this unusually high level of certainty about how many of you are in Floki right now. How many of you already counted on $150,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year? How many of you already were sold, probably disproved by now, that you could have a water faucet of leads? Yeah, well, reality doesn't meet those expectations, does it? And then we become toxic. Our brain stops functioning because we believe poor decisions are good decisions, and we have abandoned our good decision-making framework from before. Right? So we have this narrative, and what this does is this causes polarization. High ticket versus low ticket. High ticket is the only way to go. Again, we already disproved that by just inverting the statement, right? But we get this narrative. Democrat versus Republican. Left versus right. pro this, whatever. Like, we have these narratives and we become cognitively lazy because we make sense of things really quickly. Do you know what it's called when you make sense of things too quickly? It is the thing I tried to caution you against throughout all of Nicsmas. Do not close the loops and do not let anybody close them for you. Leave them open. Otherwise, you are making sense of things too quickly. You are becoming cognitively lazy. You never learn from anything, and you get stuck here where now you have a narrative. The closed loop is a narrative that you have bought. You will search. We know we all do this, right? Bitcoin maxis do it. Ethereum maxis do it. High ticket maxis do it. Low ticket maxis do it. We will find the technicals that match the narrative. We will cherry pick the technicals that match the narrative, and we will find quotes, one-liners, people that pay attention. We will find one-liners that sound like fundamentals, but they're bullshit because we go, okay, what are the words? What are the numbers? And then what, right? We use our 3 filters and these will fall apart. But we don't use our 3 filters because we are not reasoning from a place of fundamentals. We're filling the holes in the narrative. This is all from not being able to discern whether a decision is a good decision or a bad decision, disconnected from the outcome. Right? Does that make sense? So what happens, the convenient story is created. We label people for us or against us, right? Democrat, Republican, Catholic, whatever religion, we label people, and we start to prophesize the future for ourselves and for others. And guess what happens? Reality does not meet our prophecy. Did your water faucet of leads make you $1 billion passively? Did Bitcoin hit $200,000? Did Floki hit a $50 billion market cap? When reality does not meet the prophecy, it creates a massive, massive anxiety, right? Sense of anxiety, which creates a doom loop. This is the doom loop that you are putting yourself in. Well, the marketer said this was going to happen. Well, I really believed, and we watch people fight for this narrative. They ignore the technicals. They find technicals to fit the narrative, and then they make up fundamental statements that would fall apart under examination, but we're not examining them because we aren't reasoning from fundamentals. We're reasoning from the narrative. Right? All because we cannot discern a good decision from a bad decision. And we get lazy. We watch outcome and go, oh, that person's smart. I'm going to believe them. Not necessarily the case. You can probably recognize this. I could give a million more examples where you probably recognize yourself in this. Right? So, hopefully this makes sense. We can't make a snap judgment based on the outcome. And we can't let somebody quickly make sense of something. We must leave loops open so that we can discern for ourselves what belongs there. We cannot just accept a narrative. So, and then anytime you start prophesizing the future and fitting the technicals and the fundamentals to it, you are a countdown to doomsday. And that is your fault. Whatever happens right here, all the damage you do to yourself and to others, that is on you. You can find a lot of people to blame. Go back to Cartman's Triangle. Sure. But I'm telling you, it's on you. You cannot convince me otherwise. Of course, things outside of your control are going to happen, and that's not your fault. But if it's coming from this narrative, and you have labeled people, and you have began to prophesize the future, every negative thing that happens, it's on you. You've been an a-hole. You really have. And we all do it. We just got to catch ourselves and be an a-hole less often. Make sense? That's a lot. So what do we do? Let's call a spade a spade. We all need narrative. Somebody asked me what narrative is the most effective. That's actually a good question because we're humans, our brains are always working. We do need a narrative, but we can't start with a narrative and reason from there. We go to our handy dandy toolbox and we invert. We leave this loop open. The narrative is a closed loop. Beginning, middle, end, right? We leave this loop open and we say, all right, what do we know about fundamentals? Fundamental principles, gravity, right? Everything we've talked about in Nicsmas, there's been no technicals. These are all fundamentals. These are things, you could go through like a lot of Charlie Munger stuff. You read Poor Charlie's Almanac, it's full of fundamentals. Like these are fundamental truths that when stress tested and inverted, hold up against the evidence over time. From these fundamentals, what are the technicals? And given that, what is the most effective narrative for me to believe? It could very well be, I made the best decision I could have made. And unfortunately, the outcome was poor. And based on the fundamentals and the technicals, part of my narrative is I believe that person probably got lucky. I may not know that for sure, but I'm going to withhold judgment because it seems to me reasoning from the fundamentals, which I'm stress testing against time and evidence, and looking at the technicals of what I understand, this is where you go down rabbit holes. You don't go down rabbit holes to prove your narrative. You go down rabbit holes to understand the fundamentals that could drive the narrative. You go down rabbit holes to understand the technicals behind whatever you're doing so that you can come up with a narrative that is enough to move forward. Without a narrative, we will be paralyzed. But you could very say, I made the best decision I could have made given what I know. Now I know something else. I might make that decision a little bit differently. And that person, I still think they made a bad decision. Time will tell. But I'm going to withhold judgment that they are more intelligent than I am. And I'm just going to pay attention. That's a narrative. Right? This does not lead to prophesizing the future. This leads to receptivity. Right? Which, all the way back in Nicsmas, what do we talk about? It's all about staying in a space where you are receptive. You start with a narrative, you are not receptive. You have closed it off, and you are now just going to fight like hell to find any evidence that your narrative exists. Look at extreme religions. There are people that will read the same exact text, but based on however they were raised or whatever they were taught or however it was interpreted originally, they will change the technicals to mean something else, and the fundamentals are entirely different from the same words, right? Then they label people. Then they prophesize the future. It doesn't go the way they planned. Then they got to make something like it's a disaster. So, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand. Quickly closing loops makes you an a-hole. And a lot of times it does it by discrediting yourself where you deserve credit. And this happens all of the time. All the time. Some of the smartest people, this is part of Dunning-Kruger, the smartest people doubt themselves. Let me show you why some of the smartest people doubt themselves. And then this is the last part of Nicsmas today. This is a quadrant which turned into the Skills Challenge Index. Okay? Working with squares today. I say that again, please, about rabbit holes. You go down the rabbit holes, in my opinion, when you're starting with fundamentals. You don't go down rabbit holes to prove you're right or support your narrative. You go down rabbit holes to say, is this really a fundamental truth? Can I find it in other domains throughout history? And then you study history. Like I don't, people are always like, what business books do you read? How are you so good at business? I don't read business books. Because I don't start with a narrative, this is how you build a business, and then try to prove it. I start with, like, what are the fundamental realities of life, and then how can I reason to the business that I want? I said the other day, people are like, how does a DEX work? I don't fucking know. I know how mine works. I didn't say I'm going to build a DEX and then go look how is a DEX built. So what do I know to be fundamentally true? And then what are the technicals behind this? And then what's it going to look like? I have no idea how anybody else builds anything. I don't care. I don't care. The second you go, I can do that. How are you doing it? I can do that too. Like, you're not doing anything innovative. You're copying somebody. So this is, Dan offered to walk over because he helped build this SCI, but I'm just going to brain roll so I don't lose my flow here. So the main reason here, this is also a CCA thing. If you want to hear me and Dan jam about it, mostly Dan and Randy jam about it. CCA is a good place. There are different things. So the reason I originally shared this was brain dump, right? Brain sludge. And this was in a private group. This is my network. And the 4 quadrants, credit Randy Masdell and Dan Nicholson. A lot of times you ever sit there and look at a task list and be like, man, I must be getting old. What happened to me? I used to be able to do these things, like these 4 tasks in 20 minutes. And now I just stare at the fucking wall. I refresh Facebook. Why can't I get this done? Am I getting old? Am I lazy? Am I losing a step? And oftentimes, especially for high-performing, like truly not people that say they're high performers, but truly high-performing people, it's not that you've lost a step. It's that there's these quadrants. And I'll share an article with you that it's a blog I wrote, and it's a graphic that Dan Nicholson shared with me that's a little bit more elaborate. But this is the easiest way for me to help you understand it. There are things that are high challenge, high skill. Okay, that means it's a lot of effort. You could probably change this to effort, but I'm going to leave it as challenge. High effort, high skill. So it could be like learning piano. It takes a lot of focus, right? A lot of bandwidth, and you're developing a skill, very high skill. Learning piano. Writing, learn. A lot of this is going to be learning stuff a lot of times. It could be like writing a control beating sales page, right? High challenge, a lot of focus, takes a lot of bandwidth, or BJJ championship at the highest level. This is going to be all sports at the highest level, especially when the stakes are high. Okay. Now you also have high skill, low challenge. That means you could learn the piano, play it every day, master it. 20 years later, it requires a very high level of skill, but doesn't require effort or focus. It's just natural to you, right? So this could just be playing piano after you're a master at it, or any instrument, right? It could be throwing the football around, but you got 2 professional quarterbacks. They were professional starting quarterbacks 10 years ago. So the skill is through the roof, but the actual challenge of it is not. Okay? Low skill, high challenge. Chopping down a tree or something, right? A lot of effort. Running a mile, running a long time, depending on your fitness level, right? A lot of effort, high challenge. Doesn't require a ton of technical skill. Then you got low challenge, low skill, right? Watching TV. Low challenge, low skill. Refreshing Facebook. Okay. Now, I'm not going to share the skills challenge index that Dan shared with me, because I think it's a little bit it's very, very useful. I'm going to share with you. I'm not going to talk over it. A little bit of group indexing, which we talked about before, which is another concept that I pulled from Dan, is I really want you to think about what's true for you, not necessarily what the graphic says. Okay? Something could have been high challenge, high skill. And if you're like me, this is my personality, I will plow through this stuff. I obsess over it. I need to figure it out. That's what crypto is for me. That's what writing was for a while. I wrote a daily email, and it never felt like work because I wanted to learn how to do it at a very high level. But something can be high challenge, high skill. You could be learning how to write really good copy, but you're not a control beater. You just want to write good email copy. And it moves from this quadrant to this quadrant. It is a different thing for you. So your brain may very well thrive here. And when something moves here, all of a sudden you can't find the to do it. You just can't find the motivation to do it. Right? And it could also be as your fitness level improves, what was high effort, high challenge becomes low effort, lower challenge. So you have to know yourself and the nature of what is going on. So you don't go, it'd be like, I used to be able to do this. What's wrong with me? I meant to say I dissociate when I have to do mindless tasks. But the thing is, another mistake, going back to currencies, you're being an a-hole if you think everybody else is like you. It's very unusual. There are a number of people that their job, their responsibility, and their best chance of thriving is to do either high challenge, low skill, like manual labor, or even low challenge, low skill, or high skill, low challenge. This might be like a CPA, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, right? But like a CPA doing boring work for them, that they still have a skill that none of us have. We couldn't do it, right? So there may be people, there's a handful, there's probably a lot of people that actually thrive in showing up and doing 50 hours a week of something that very few people can do, but it's not challenging. This is why you have to know yourself. So I'm not giving a generic, I think there's certain archetypes that probably thrive in certain quadrants. So here we have to know, no, nothing's wrong with me. What's wrong is that I don't know myself well enough, so I'm kind of being an a-hole by keeping this stuff on my task list. Well, I used to be able to do it. I used to be able to plow right through it. I could do it tomorrow. Like, no. Why are you setting yourself up like that? If you thrive with high challenge, high skill tasks, and something represents that, as soon as it becomes something else to you, and you know yourself, it needs to occupy a different space. It may not be, it may need to get off your calendar altogether, or you may need to do it at a different time. But we have to recognize where we thrive. Now, most creators, innovators, I don't think I'm an innovator. I mostly just share things that are already existing. I just share them differently. But especially people that know me know, and it drives people nuts. It drives people really nuts. And this is part of not being an a-hole and giving into peer pressure or being judged by others. When you have high skill, low challenge, when you can do something better than most of the world and it's not hard for you, you are going to feel obligated. You're going to feel like you should do it because it's easy and it makes a lot of money and I can do it and other people can't. And other people are going to tell you the same thing. Why don't you just do this if it's so easy for you? Make a lot of money. Well, because maybe you want to be happy and maybe it doesn't make you happy, right? Maybe that is the fastest path to closing the gap. But you got to know these things because this is where a lot of guilt and shame comes from. A lot of guilt and shame comes from, man, well, I could do it. And then I feel like I should do it because I can. And I should do it because I can, and it's easy for me. What the fuck does that have to do with closing the gap is the question. You should not do something because it's easy. Now, it's possible that a version of something in this quadrant is the most efficient path forward to close the gap, but it has to be weighed against closing the gap, not against because it's easy and other people said I should do it. Well, I could do this with very little effort and I'll get all kinds of appraisal from my peers. That's a risk. Okay, the other risk is at this level, if it's high skill, high challenge, you're probably going to fail a lot. If you didn't fail a lot, then it wouldn't be high challenge for you. So when you combine the fact that you are going to fail a lot here, and somebody else in a different quadrant doesn't fail as often, with our inability to discern the quality of decisions and the propensity to fall into this doom loop, you could see how it gets pretty messy if we don't know ourselves and we're not really clear on who we are, what we're good at, and what these things represent to us. Does that make sense? There's like a whole bunch of stuff, but it all comes back to become who you are by learning who you are. If you know who you are, Randy always shares that, if you know yourself, you win 1,000 battles or whatever, from Sun Tzu. That's not the quote, but same idea. So we just have to be aware, and we expose ourselves to this over and over and over and over, and we don't want, here's the trick, I don't every day pull up these quadrants. I haven't looked at this since 7/10. So I haven't looked at this in 5 months, more than 5 months. It's not like I pull this up every day and chart everything I'm doing. You don't have to if you can kind of invert the whole process and say, fundamentally, who am I? What do I care about? A lot of this stuff becomes self-evident. You just have these little frameworks. And if you really know who you are, you do all the work up front to know who you are, to know what matters to you, to quantify it the best you can. You don't have to go through all this crap all the time. You just got to know who you are and have some frameworks, and every now and then check yourself. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. What I'm learning here is individualization, being adult, stand firm behind your convictions while also learning and evolving. Yeah, I wouldn't stand firm behind convictions, and that might just be a semantic thing, because that, to me, that sounds like doing this, having your convictions and then finding the technicals to match them, and then using the literate, right? The problem with words is you can kind of say them in a way they don't mean anything. Like, people that pay attention, but still support your narrative. So I don't know. It might be a semantic thing. I think you need to know fundamentally what's the most important to you. I really do. I think you need to know your personality, and you know yourself really well. You need to know which quadrants you need to play in. You know yesterday's homework, listening to Dan's podcast. You know what style of game you should be playing. I personally, this is my personal opinion, because I'm kind of like the okay with open loops and certainty. I'm not so sure that we should be sure about much else. Certainty, in this sense, right? Not the sense that we talk about. Conviction can very easily lead to, I probably have it here, polarization, making sense of things quickly, becoming cognitively lazy, creating convenient stories, labeling people, prophesying the future, and then reality falling apart and doom looping. But it might just be semantics. Yep. Replace conviction with priorities. That's what I would do. I would replace convictions with priorities and understand that the biggest risk we run, and Dr. Jeff Spencer talks about this, Dan and I talk about this, is consistency bias. We are afraid that if we say our priorities out loud, right, that they're permanent, and they're not, and that's okay. And then we're afraid, well, if we change our priorities, well, then nobody's going to trust us because we said this mattered, and 5 years later we said this mattered. And again, who cares? Who cares that complete strangers think you're wishy-washy or not? All that matters is that the people that matter understand what's going on and you communicate with them. So we have all these things fighting against us, telling us, when I was 17, I said I was going to be a doctor, and now I'm doing it. And there's so much pride in following through on some decision you were made when you were 17 years old. Think about the quality of decisions you make when you're 17 years old. Think about the quality of decisions you make when you're 25 years old, right? So we get stuck on this, well, I said it out loud, and now there's consistency bias where I have to follow through. Otherwise, I can't trust myself to follow through, and other people can't trust me to follow through. We're kind of being an a-hole. You're trying to be like trustworthy, but you're kind of being an a-hole by not re-examining like what is actually what I want and what's actually best for my family and what's actually like yada, yada, yada. And it's all out of fear of what other people might think and out of you not trusting yourself to make good decisions. If I don't follow through on this, then I can't trust myself. Like blindly following through on something that you decided you were going to do 5 years ago. Like you're kind of an a-hole. You're kind of an a-hole for thinking that 5 years from now, you make a decision today. I promise 5 years from now, if you re-reason through it, you're probably going to think that you were a total idiot today. And that's probably going to be true. I might watch all these videos and be like, wow, I was an idiot. That's a very real possibility. I'm aware of it. But that's okay because we have to move forward. So we have to understand who we are, understand what we want, understand the fundamentals that the universe has revealed to be true over time. Obviously, we have mentors and people that have infinite wisdom that can help us. And we have to understand the technicals. There's new technology all the time, new stuff coming up. We have to do our best to stay on top of it if it matters. And yeah, our narrative will change. And our narrative changes, and that's okay because we are allowing for receptivity. Right? When does our narrative change? I will show you when our narrative changes if you're interested. And then we'll go VIPs. Okay. It's gonna let me do this. You know, I realized something new. So you don't close the loop. I told all of you, leave the loops open. Because what you're going to do is you're going to hear me say something, you're going to change your narrative, and you're going to do all the dumb shit I just said, please don't do. You go, ooh, this is something new. Every part of you is going to say, I need to close the loop. I need to Google it. I need an explanation for it. You're going to try to quickly, as quick as possible, making sense of something and rob yourself of a learning experience. And then you're going to go right back to being an a-hole by doing this whole thing backwards. We say, ooh, this narrative feels off. Nick said something, and then Dan said something, and then, I was a little bit more receptive, and my wife actually said something that made me think, let me go back to the fundamentals. Remember when I said I have a bad memory? Purposely, so that we can go back to the fundamentals and re-reason to a more effective narrative given what we know now. Right? Even if you do reason to something, we get lazy and we go, ooh, new information. Hurry, make sense of this information for me. Somebody tell me what this means. And now, we're going this way. We're being a-holes. My opinion and my suggestion is to stop trying to make sense of everything so quickly. That's how you get duped. That's how you dupe yourself. That's how you become an a-hole. So, Nicsmas gift. What I'm going to do, if you are in Nicsmas Decentralized, I shared some of the letters with you. I have 2 years. I have 24 issues of the letter plus a bunch of bonuses. I'm going to give you 2 years of the letter. You're not going to get it until Nicsmas, the 28th. Okay, if you're in Nicsmas Decentralized, or if you have put down your deposit for the CCA. Okay, again, CCA is probably the thing that if anybody said, what do I do next? How do I learn how to master all this? I'm going to say CCA. I'm also giving you the Allegiance Accelerator. I made a short course about how to develop as Allegiance Capital, how to think about Allegiance Capital, how to have it in your business and your life. So if you are in Nicsmas Decentralized or you have put down your deposit for the CCA, then you will be getting those two things by today. Okay, by the end of the day today. I'll have more gifts every day, but if you are not in, right, so like if you enroll sometime tomorrow, you don't get today's gifts. It's just the way it goes. It's how I kind of limit the amount of free stuff going around. Okay, so that'll be for Nicsmas Decentralized and students of the CCA that have put down their deposits. Now I'm going to end this video. I'm going to talk very slow so I don't cut myself off. And if you are in Nicsmas Decentralized or have a CCA, I'm just going to fire up a Zoom. We got 20, 30 minutes, and we can just dialogue. Okay, we'll just hang out. I'm going to have a hard stop on the hour, so longest possible. We maybe go for 50 minutes, and we'll just kind of chat about stuff, and I'll share some cool stuff with you guys.